Hello, everybody. Welcome to our latest My Racehorse Live. I'm Christina Blacker. I'm joining you from Southern California today. It is about 9 o'clock out here on the West Coast. I have plenty of guests coming in to help me as well. This is the Royal Duet. This is a show unlike any other that we have offered here at My Racehorse in the past. We're going to be talking about a very unique offering. But if you're new to us today, if you're unfamiliar with My Racehorse, I just want to give you a quick overview. This is basically the partnership and the syndicate that brings racehorse ownership to the masses, to everyone. We have horses available at every price point. I would encourage you to check out the My Racehorse app if you're not already familiar, and just to sit back and listen and hopefully enjoy the show today, because we have a very special guest joining us. Trainer Wesley Ward will be on with us in just a little while. But as I mentioned, this is a new show. We're talking about the Royal Duet, and these are two young horses that we are hoping, fingers crossed, can make their way over to Royal Ascot, one of the most prestigious race meets in the world. And while I have been lucky enough to go there as a fan, I do need a little help here talking about the particulars of Royal Ascot. And so for that, we have international racing expert Nick Luck. You know him from his shows on NBC. If there's a big race, he is there covering it, and he's joining us from the UK live this evening as far as your time. Nick, thanks for taking some time to help us out here on the Royal Duet.
Not at all, Christina. This is our first collaboration. I hope it's not our last. And when you were talking about the Royal Duet, two young, highly talented performers who are going to ply their trade either side of the Atlantic, I'm thinking, well, that's you and me, right?
Right. You know what? I haven't worked a show at Royal Ascot, so maybe we could just parlay this into that, right? Fingers crossed on that one. Thanks for folks who have tuned in already, who are joining the show. I do want to let you know we have a lot of questions. So if you have a question for Nick, for myself, for Wesley Ward, who will be with us in a little while, jump onto that link and make sure that you send it in right away. Let's give you the particulars about these two horses. So no, I want to make it clear, this is an offering in partnership. So if you are purchasing a share of these horses, you get two for the price of one. We have a Justify filly, and she was a $925,000 Keeneland September graduate. She is already in training with Wesley Ward in South Florida. We have some video of her that we can show you right now. She's a beautiful chestnut filly. She has a great walk to her. She has those big ears, which are going to indicate that she has a bit of growing to do. Nice, strong shoulder. And Nick, I love when you see young horses like this that just kind of drop their head like that. They see real level. This is an indication of a horse that's going to use herself properly. You see a good hind end on her as well. Really powerful looking young filly.
Where all the power is coming from, behind the saddle. You see that so frequently in these progeny of Justify. Both the Colt and the fillies seem equally robust. I loved one or two of the Justify fillies, particularly I saw in Europe last year, and you obviously know what they've been doing in America. The Triple Crown hero has made such a bright start to his stud career. I know this filly was expensive, but I think that the value of these Justifies is only going to grow, because I'm pretty sure he's going to have classic winners in Europe this year, in addition to his American success.
I've been keeping an eye on his statistics too, just in terms of the young horses. And I think for a horse that, debuted a little bit later in his 3-year-old year, would go on to be a Triple Crown winner, a Belmont winner included in that Triple Crown. I was shocked at how precocious they have been and how accomplished they are as turf sprinters as well. I mean, these percentages are really high. And I was kind of looking back further into the pedigree here, just not to be forgotten, is that Justify a son of Scat Daddy. So you have plenty of turf influence there. The other horse in this partnership.
That's a key point as well, Christina, I think, particularly with Ascot in mind. Because Scat Daddy's been a brilliant stallion. He can do it everywhere, anywhere, all sorts of distances. But he's particularly effective on the straight course at Ascot. His numbers are extraordinary there, really.
The other horse I want to ask you about the pedigree a little bit. So we have a Colt here as part of this partnership who's a son of Kotai Glory. He's not a stallion that I'm as familiar with. What can you tell us about Kotai Glory?
Well, again, it's funny this. A bit like Justified by Scat Daddy, and Scat Daddy's got an excellent record with progeny at Ascot, particularly on that straight course. Kotai Glory is by Exceed and Excel, who was a brilliant Australian sprinter, shuttle stallion, very successful Australia and in England. And again, his progeny have got a great record up the straight track at Ascot. So Kotai Glory should follow suit. Kotai Glory was a very, very fast horse, really an out-and-out 5-furlong horse, brazen speed, pace from the gate. Progeny should be effective both sides of the Atlantic. I think overachieved really with his first crop of 2-year-olds, upgraded a lot of mares. 100 grand's, quite expensive for one of his progeny, but I looked at this horse's pedigree, and the two offspring that have won were both very, very tough and very fast.
He came out of the Goff's Orby sale in Ireland. Nick, what kind of a sale is that?
It's an elite sale. It's a equivalent of the Book One at Keeneland or Book One at Tattersalls in Newmarket. It's Ireland's premier yearling sale. So yeah, he's in amongst good horses, and the fact that he was selected for the Orby sale in and of itself suggests that he's a well above average physical.
Love looking at him. I love how he just looks so forward. He looks very curious, very sharp. We have some other video that we can show you throughout the show of this guy. Also important to remember that he will be campaigned in partnership with Stone Street. There's a lot of success in years past with Wesley Ward and Stone Street at Royal Ascot, and the filly will be campaigned in partnership with Gainesway. So we thank our partners for kind of being a big part of this journey as we just start to embark on it. We might have some folks, Nick, that have never been to Ascot. We might have a lot of people that have never been to Ascot, or they're just unfamiliar in general. If they're brand new to horse racing, to My Racehorse, how do you encapsulate the grandeur that is Royal Ascot?
So hard to sum up in just a few sentences, but I always describe it as the best of ancient and modern. It's got all that tradition, founded in 1711 by Queen Anne. Wonderful sport. The racing gets better and better every year, but a true highlight of the British social season as well. And for all its pageantry and pomp, it is a sporting occasion that has evolved incredibly. I mean, you've been there enough times, Christina. It's got a real modernity to it now as well. I think it's the very best of British, and it always embraces international competition. And a lot of the international competition is what makes it quite special and really sets it apart. And Wesley Ward's been such a huge part of that. He
really has. He's been so pivotal in just bringing this forward for all of the Americans and making it seem like a mountain that could be climbed. It's possible. It's possible to travel a horse to Royal Ascot and to win. Wesley's done it 12 times. I would echo everything that Nick said. If you ever have the chance to go to Royal Ascot, please put this on your racing bucket list. It is an experience like no other. Completely dressed up. There is a dress code for the ladies and for the men. You'll see all the gentlemen in their top hat and tails. The tailgates are a little different than what we're used to here in the States. They are tailgating with champagne and caviar out front. It's definitely a very high-end experience, but it's just one of those kind of racing events that you want to experience. And the Royals are there. I think that's a key point to remember, Nick. Every day we begin the day at Royal Ascot with the Royal Procession.
And obviously, we lost Her late Majesty the Queen, who was such a huge part of Royal Ascot for so many years, and racing was her passion. And under her stewardship, really, the race course and the occasion has grown enormously, and we're so fortunate to have had her for so long. And it'll be very interesting to see, how that continues. I'm sure King Charles and Her Majesty the Queen Consort Camilla will be well in evidence in honour of Her late Majesty next year. And indeed, I think they've got as strong a crop of royal owned horses as has been the case for quite some time. I think the legacy has been left quite secure.
We are going to have Wesley Ward joining us in just a second. He's finishing up some training there in the Kentucky area. So Nick and I will continue to talk a little bit more about these horses and just about Royal Ascot in general. Nick, I am curious, with the passing of the Queen back in September, what do you think will be done in terms of tributes to Her late Majesty this year? And do you expect the Royals to be, I guess, attending in full force just as a show that this is something that was so important to her, and they continue to want to keep the prestige and the level of importance amongst the country and amongst the world for this race meet?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a recognition that this was such a private passion of Her late Majesty that this is something that it needs to be continued in order to honour her memory. Now, it may well be that the Royal Studs at Sandringham are rationalised a bit, are slimmed down. They might not breed so many horses, but it's definitely the case that some of the better ones were bred latterly. And I think you will see certainly Her Majesty the Queen Consort out in force, and I'm hoping King Charles as well to keep the whole show on the road.
All right. Well, I am definitely looking forward to it. We will be waiting for June. I know it's actually ramping up to Cheltenham this March. So you've got some of the biggest racing events in Europe right on our doorstep here in the next weeks and months. Okay, Wesley Ward is ready. He is going to join us now, a man that needs no introduction, certainly. But for those of you that are new to us today, here he is, Wesley, busy as always, a 6-time Breeders' Cup winner, a 12-time Royal Ascot winner. And we're going to highlight some of those past successes as well. Wesley, we know you're busy as always, so thanks for joining us this morning.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on, Christina. Hi, Nick. How you doing, bud?
Wesley, it's always good to see you. Who have you got over your right shoulder there?
We got futures. These are future prospects. So we're hoping. These are crossing our fingers.
Well,
That's
we're
what it's
hoping
all about.
you've got two stars of the future for my racehorse members in your barn for Royal Ascot this year. How excited are you?
Very excited. I tell you, they gave me some good ones, so now I got to come through for them.
Wesley, I don't want to intimidate you, but we have nearly 100 questions. So this is going to be fast. The folks have really made their voice heard here with the My Racehorse app. I'm going to jump right into the questions. So Tiffany is our first question submitter. She asks, what has been your favorite thing about these two horses so far?
Physically, we paid a lot of money for them, and so they gave them to me, the physical types that I would like to get to train, and that usually fit right into what we do, and Royal Ascot hopefuls. So, as well as the pedigrees, obviously, are conducive to where we're going. But now it's just it's up to me and them.
Can you detail a little bit as far as the physical attributes that you look for in a horse that would be successful early in their career?
Well, we certainly want a powerful hind end, a hip on them, as well as I like the bigger type horses. They seem to, if they're fast and they're big, they usually go on to be, they're really good. A lot of smaller horses can be fast just because they're agile and quick. But if you get a big ones like we have, and they're fast, which I've seen so far, hopefully they'll go on to be warrant going over to Ascot and be competitive.
One of the things that's really set your horses apart, Wesley, is how forward they are, the speed out of the gate that's really sort of taken European horses who are a little bit slower to learn by surprise. But oftentimes you're working with European pedigrees, so it's the similar raw material, but you're getting a training edge. How do you achieve that?
Just a lot of schooling in the gate, to get them to where it's not like a big scary monster when you first go into it with them. We start very slow and just kind of walking them through for 30 or 40 times before we ever close the doors up on them, to where they're very used to it. And then we'll go ahead and we'll start to just kind of close the doors in the front and behind, kind of like they're in a horse trailer, and or on a horse plane, like the one Colt has been to come over here, and where it's just they're not scared. And then we'll open the front of the doors after standing, and we'll let them walk out for the first few times, and then gradually jog out, gallop out, and then we get to where we can break them and then stand them as well, to where that they're not so anxious and nervous in there.
Taking a look at a Breeze from the Justify filly at Payson Park here in February. So they're continuing to train on these horses and getting ready for hopefully a spring debut. Wesley, our next question from an anonymous person out there on the web. They say, I have seen Wesley Ward's success with 2-year-olds in the past. Is interval training one of his methods? And if not, what methods do you use?
No, interval training is where you train them sort of twice in a day, or multiple times in a day. I just train once. They come out and we take a long time. It's a big long walk to the track and a long walk back, and just spend a lot of time with them.
How much do you think it's training physical and training between the ears, training them mentally as well, Wesley?
Well, each horse is different. These two are highly intelligent horses. Some of them get nervous, especially when you start breezing, and then all of a sudden the light bulb goes on. You got to kind of slow them mentally down. But these two in particular, they're very, very intelligent horses and do everything right.
Wesley, let's talk about the horses themselves. Paul Constantino asks, if they're race ready at Keeneland, will the Justify filly and Kotai Colt be targeting the 4.5 furlong dirt races or the 5.5 furlong turf races?
More likely than not, we're going to be targeting the grass. That's what they're bred for. There's those races at Keeneland. There will be also races at Churchill, and also as well at Belmont. So we'll try to circle around the three. We also have an option in the synthetic track up at Woodbine, and so as the horses, I'm not going to push them to the race. I'm going to let them tell me as we get closer to a race where to go.
What are some of those signals that they can give you? How do they tell you that they're ready to debut?
Well, for the most part, when we start leaning on them a little bit and instilling the speed into them, the biggest thing that holds the 2-year-olds back to where you're not getting 100 or 200 entrants in a race is the shins. So I I just kind of go off of that. So if a horse comes up, just with we check them every afternoon after their breezes, of which they'll breeze once a week usually. And if a horse comes up with a little bit of a shin, we just back off and jog him until he's back 100% perfect, ready for the next work. So that's, all the trainers are at this time of the year and into the spring and summer. That's what you're kind of looking at. And that's the biggest thing that holds the 2-year-olds back from entering is the shins. So we'll train around those.
Wesley, normally the horses that you take to Ascot, the 2-year-olds you take to Ascot are pretty ready. They're horses who look sharp and precocious in their preps. How early in the year can you normally identify a likely one that's going to learn quickly?
Well, in the next few weeks, it's really going to start. They're going to start separate. We'll start seeing which ones are going to be early on, precocious, move forward without shins that you're having to contend with. I've had Royal Ascot winners that we've dealt with that have had shins, and because it's a grass, it's a very forgiving surface. You're able to get them to the races and get them to Ascot and win at Ascot. I've had others that have just Lady Aurelia never had any issues in her whole career ever, so we were able to move forward with, and those are easy to train.
One more question. I think we can pop that one back up, Wesley, and this one is key. What will be the deciding factor if or when they go to Ascot? Is it the workouts in the mornings, or how they actually run in their races, or any other kind of physical indications as far as the condition that they are in?
Well, the workouts in the morning indicate which ones are going to be in the maiden races, and then from there you have to see if that translates to the afternoon, to where they're going to warrant going over there. We don't try to go over there anymore just by chance. We try to go over there to make our mark. That not always being the case, but at least going in, you think you will. So they'll have to win here first, and then go. From that win, we'll put them on the grass. Sometimes Florida turf doesn't really translate to going over to Ascot or European grass. That's why a lot of horses have worked well for me in the past down at Palm Meadows in Florida. But you bring them up to Keeneland after they've ran and won, and you put them on the grass here at Keeneland, which is very similar to the turf at Ascot, and they won't work as well. It's just a different type of grass. It's hard and fast down in Florida, and here it's at Keeneland. It's a lot deeper, a lot more like the turf racing they have in Europe. And I've pulled horses off the plane from going there because of that. They're not the same horses on the grass up here at Keeneland.
That's interesting. Ellen asks, Wesley, after Royal Ascot, will both horses continue to race on turf in the US? And what are the challenges in training horses to race both in England and the US?
Well, unfortunately, after they run and win, and we're moving to Ascot, and if they don't go, the next race that we do have on the grass is at Saratoga. They have two grass, one for Colt, one for filly there. So we kind of back up a little bit, and then kind of from there they start to open up on the grass for stakes races.
Okay.
What about the weather, Wesley? I mean, you must be keeping such a keen eye on the weather, not only there at Keeneland and as you're preparing these horses for their debut races, but as we get closer and closer to Royal Ascot. How much does the weather and the ground affect your decisions?
Well, when I really start looking at it over at Ascot, I mean, you don't really know here. I did find out early on with Lady Aurelia, because after she won at Keeneland, we took her and we prepared her at Arlington Park. And one day at Arlington, it was just a driving rainstorm, and Arlington was gracious enough to let us go on with the work. And it was unbelievable to watch. I worked her against 2 other Keeneland winners, and it was like she was breathing different air. She broke off 4 or 5 behind them, and she outworked them by 15 lengths and on a really deep, soggy grass course. So when we got her over to Royal Ascot, on the day of the race, it had really rained hard, and the Stone Street team had concerns about running her on the soft ground. And I told them, I said that won't be an issue at all based on what I've seen at Royal Ascot, and she powered through it. She loved the soft turf.
I mean, she was ridiculously impressive that day. And then she came out the next year and she beat older males in the King's Stand almost as emphatically. What was it about her that set her apart, do you think? What was it about her that gave her the ability to travel and to excel on foreign soil?
You just named that word, ability. She just had a phenomenal ability. She, once we went through the process, and it wasn't so much early on. She was broken and prepared for at Stone Street training stables with Ian Brennan, and he had high hopes for her from what he's seen. But when she got down to me at Palm Meadows, her first couple of works, she was outworked. It's a different environment that she got to. It's a big, wide turf course, and a lot of horses that I have, it takes a work or two to get there. She was a really beautiful filly, fast type and precocious like I wanted, but I didn't really see it. And when we got down to Palm Meadows and my visually watching a couple of works she had, and then we moved her up to Keeneland here, and my main rider, Julio Garcia, worked her. And the second work she had here, boom, the light bulb went on, and we knew what we had. And Julio came off the track all smiles, and I already knew what I seen visually, and I knew what we had. And she just ran and won, and it was from there, it was just a great run.
I think that's something that's important to remember too, is we're talking about these horses, these 2-year-olds, and of course targeting specific races in their age group at Royal Ascot, but there are plenty of races for older horses as well. So keep in mind, this is the goal. Obviously, this is the plan right now. But if it doesn't work out, there are other races down the line in Europe and England for them to compete in, hopefully, and to still kind of continue to fulfill that dream. I want to grab some questions from the chat if we can, because we have quite a few. Wesley, Ryan asks, how do you approach a yearling sale and subsequent training if your thought and your idea is to have a 2-year-old that's ready to race by the spring?
Well, obviously you're going to look for a physical type, fast, very fast body type of the horse. And then, as long as the pedigree aligns with it, then, that's kind of what you're looking for and trying to purchase some early or hoping to be early runners.
Wesley, Marco asks, is there any problem with horses that travel overseas in their performances? Do they suffer the same sort of jet lag to what humans experience after long flights?
I think that either it was NIRA or TVG did a study on the horses that I brought over and back, and it's just an amazing percentage of horses that have gone over to run in Ascot or in Europe and came back over here and the first start winning. I give them plenty of time when they come back, but it was always sort of, I think, mentally, a lot of mentally in a lot of trainers' minds that they couldn't go over to do that. But it's really no different than going from, say, New York to California for a race or California to New York. It's essentially the same distance. And the horses that I brought to Ascot and we go to I try different trainer stables just to kind of, for me, seeing how that opening my eyes and how they train and ask a lot of questions. But every time I go with the horses over there in all the different yards and places I've been stabled, I mean, the horses seem to just put on weight. It's almost like being on a farm over there. It's that's the reason why I like to train at Keeneland is it's a very peaceful, tranquil environment as opposed to, say, Belmont. You're right in the middle of a city. At Aqueduct, the barn is, you could throw a rock and hit the Bell Parkway. So it's it takes a certain type of horse to be able to go into an environment like that, as opposed to Keeneland or the stables they have in Europe.
It does so much for them to be in that farm type environment too. They stay in the feed tub. You can continue to train on with them. It's just a kind of snowball of good effects. Jonathan asks, Wesley, do you have to train horses any differently to plan on running them overseas in that time between a maiden race and, say, a Royal Ascot?
Well, you try to get on the grass as much as possible. This way that the horses, get used to that footing. We're mandated in America for the most part to train on the dirt. So you want to try to get them onto the grass and train them as much as the tracks, Keeneland or Churchill or wherever that I'll go to prepare them, that they'll let you on there.
Wesley, we got a question here from Mark Delolio. Where do you get your tails and top hat? I want to place my order in advance. Of course, wearing morning dress, traditional morning dress is de rigueur for gentlemen in the Royal Enclosure, and you always look very smart.
Yeah, well, I've been hire over there, renting them for years and years and years at Mottcombs. Or I'm sorry, they have various different places over there to lease them over there, to rent them.
Excellent. And just perhaps sum up why this whole adventure has been so important to you, and what it is that, you know, attracted you to Ascot and keeps taking you back there.
Well, unless you're there to experience it, it's hard to tell. But you know, as you very well know, Nick, that when you go there, it's just a magical place, and everybody's excited to be there. It's from where I've been, it's the you know, it's the height of European racing. You know, everyone from Australia, and I've seen champions run there over the years from all the different countries that they have racing. You know, from Hong Kong have came, and Japan, and you know, all over Australia. The best horses have come to run there. I mean, everybody wants to go to and to win at Royal Ascot.
I'm curious, Wesley, have any of your contemporaries, any of your fellow trainers started to talk to you more about this, about running at Ascot? Because it feels like, you know, you've made this such a big part of your program and opened the doors for many American trainers. And I think it's become a goal on so many different resumes now of young up and coming trainers, existing trainers that think, well, it can be done. How do I get there? How do I go experience that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, in the coming years, you'll see more and more trainers go with their top horses to try to. It fits in really well in the calendar as well, you know, because we culminate here with the Breeders' Cup, so it gives a long time for the owner and trainer of that whatever horse that is to get them back and get them ready to be ready for a fall campaign and to culminate in the Breeders' Cup. So, you know, I think in years to come, it's going to be certainly on the calendar for a lot of the, you know, hopefully Chad, and, you know, I know Bill Mott's went, and Todd, and, you know, and Mark went, and he's won one of the signature races there with Tepin. So, you know, I hope that the bigger trainers bring their horses over.
Wesley, as we draw to a close, I just want to drill down a little bit. When you look at these two horses now, these two My Racehorse horses, the Colt by Kotai Glory and the filly by Justify, what are you seeing in them that you like? What are the specific characteristics in these horses that you're thinking, yes, I've got something to work with there?
Well, as I said earlier, the pedigrees are there. And the physical types, you know, they've done a great job in putting the physicals in my barn. And from what I've seen, the speed-wise, you know, they're going to be very fast and precocious. So it's just a question of getting them to the races. And, you know, that's where I'm going to come into, you know, the experience I have that, you know, you put the gas pedal on when you do, and you ease off it when you need to, and get them to their first race. And, you know, we need to get past their first race, their maiden win, and then on to Ascot.
Wesley, Peter asks, and I think this kind of ties in with what you're talking about, just in the future for these horses. We know we're focusing right now on the debut and hopefully Royal Ascot, but what do you see for them down the line? Do you see them as exclusively competing on turf, or do you see both surfaces or maybe a synthetic surface as a potential for them in the future?
I would think that the Colt would be predominantly just grass, but the filly, I think, can transition into any surface, you know, from what I've seen so far.
Thanks to Bill for his little comment there. Couldn't be in better hands than with you, Wesley, and we certainly agree and would echo those sentiments. Thanks for taking some time to join us this morning. I know you're busy. I know you have all those horses to train and get ready. Keeneland's coming up in just a couple of weeks, so we really appreciate you taking a few moments to answer the questions.
Thank you, Christina.
Wesley Ward joining us from his barn there at Keeneland, right there on Rice Road. That's where these horses will be as they get set to put in their final preparations, the finishing touches in advance of Keeneland. And Nick, I'm so interested too. Also, I was looking at the Keeneland condition book. You know, they didn't used to write those turf maiden races for 2-year-olds. It's interesting to me how Wesley and this sort of conquering of Royal Ascot has now shifted the way that they write their races for young horses, with this as a goal for many horsemen.
He has been a game changer. You know, he's opened the floodgates, is overstating it, but he has made it a realistic ambition to go to Ascot and win for an American horse. I don't think anyone necessarily thought that was possible. Kenny McPeak had a try a couple of times, but when Wesley started winning with Strike the Tiger first and Jealous again the very next day back in 2009, it was such a wake-up moment for so many of his contemporaries. And I don't think we'd have had the Graham Motions and the Mark Cassies bringing horses over had it not been for what Wesley's done. He's taken so many people on such a great adventure. And really, that's got to be the founding principle behind why we all love this sport and why we all love sharing our enjoyment of this sport.
Nothing quite like it, winning a race anywhere, really, and especially when you get to the premier levels and experiences like a Royal Ascot. Nick, when will we see you back here stateside?
Well, you can just tell I'm still kind of trying to tame the tomato tan from
Florida.
Miami, a very hot Miami at the weekend. Possibly there's talk I may make an appearance at the Santa Anita Derby, but it's 50-50 at the moment. But Kentucky Derby definitely.
All right. Well, we look forward to that. And thanks for helping us out and being our international expert this morning on the My Racehorse Q&A. Appreciate it, Nick.
Always a pleasure, Christina. Let's hope it's the first of many.
Absolutely. Just a reminder again, the bundle is already available with these 2 horses. You can head to the app right now if you'd like to buy a share. $202 is the price. That's for both the Justify Filly and the Kotai Glory Colt. The plan is hopefully to debut in the spring out there at Keeneland. Fingers crossed, if all goes well and you heard from Wesley what they need to do, what they need to show you in those races to move ahead to Royal Ascot. That is in June. Go ahead and jump online if you want to watch any videos, any kind of other previews about Royal Ascot to learn a little bit about it. And then these horses will be coming back to the US. So if you want to, purchase in for this idea of Royal Ascot, but you want to hope that one day you'll be able to watch these horses run, that's going to be certainly a big part of the opportunity. They're coming back here. They're currently in Florida. Those are the goals, and then we'll continue to campaign them with the folks at My Racehorse. Thank you guys for all your questions. We know there were so many. We know we didn't get to all of them, but hopefully some of your questions were answered in those put forth by your fellow My Racehorse owners. And thanks again for watching our latest live Q&A. We'll see you next time here on the My Racehorse YouTube channel.